Loss is, unfortunately, something that all of us inevitably have to deal with in some form or another throughout our lives. In media, it's not uncommon to see a show deal with loss in some way. Maybe a main character has to be written off, and the next episode deals with the characters trying to accept that loss. Usually it's a fixture of a show that has some sort of unrelated plot, but to have the main through line for your series be characters dealing with some sort of loss is not as common as you might expect it to be. And that is one of the many reasons the recently concluded Journal with Witch has been such a memorable and stellar experience to watch these past few months. One of our two lead characters, Asa, loses both of her parents in a tragic accident at the age of only 15. And the impacts of this loss, how it changes the way she lives, and how it makes her question so much about her life up to this point, are aspects that I'm not sure I've ever personally seen explored like this. Certainly not in anime. Of course, Asa is not the only main character here. We have her aunt, Makio, the author, who is an incredibly unique character, but one that nevertheless manages to feel so relatable. So one of the things I love about this series is that both of these characters do feel relatable. As I said at the start, everybody has gone through loss in some respect. And while not everybody processes loss in the exact same way, seeing all of the ways that the loss of her parents affects Asa is, I feel, incredibly cathartic. And inevitably, one or more of the ways that she reacts to it throughout the series will be relatable to you. Whether it be putting on a brave face, not having what has happened really click with her at the beginning, trying to just go on as if things are still okay, but then little by little, the sadness creeps up on you like this ball, this weight within your stomach, dragging you down until you can't ignore it anymore. Whether that be crying when you least expect it, having sudden outbursts of frustration, feeling so exhausted that you just fall asleep at times you otherwise wouldn't, because of the pain and the anger at everything that's happened, at what the world has laid at your feet, has just gotten to be too much. Having Asa and Makio play off each other through all of this, witnessing their developing dynamic, growing pains and all, is the backbone of what makes this series stay with you, episode after episode. And of course, let's not forget that Makio is dealing with a loss of her own as well. She has just lost her sister, though her reaction to it is the polar opposite of Asa's. Makio never really got along with her sister, who generally looked down on her way of life and decision to become a novelist. The relationship was so strained that Makio honestly doesn't feel sad over her sister's sudden death, and she accepts that she can't force herself to feel anything for someone in her life who she honestly hated. Despite that, Makio does still contend with reminders of her relationship with her sister throughout the show, such as when she and Asa clean out her apartment. Just like with Asa, these reminders can suddenly creep up on her. And even if only slightly, Makio does start to wonder if she had a proper understanding of the kind of person her sister really was, and what she truly thought of her. When Makio makes the decision to take Asa in, it's partly because nobody else seems to know what to do with her during the funeral. It angers her so much to see Asa being treated that way that she simply has to let those feelings out. But Makio really is not the most prepared to be handling a child, and part of her journey throughout the series is seeing her come to understand what it means to be someone's guardian. Makio being an author and being somebody who very much so buries herself in her work, not because she dislikes it, but because that's just how she does things, makes her an interesting person to suddenly put in the position of having to raise a teenager. Her apartment doesn't even have a second room. She has the one bedroom that her and Asa ultimately have to share. And most of the time, Makio is sitting at her computer, typing, trying to get her next novel out. She might just spend hours on the computer, non-stop, barely interacting with anybody else or even getting up from her seat. And that is completely and perfectly normal for her and her desired lifestyle. but her being such a different person than what Asa is used to definitely brings about some tension in their relationship. Some of my absolute favorite moments in the series are whenever Asa tries to get some sort of advice from Makio, or just asks her a question about how she feels regarding something. Makio usually will give her some sort of maxim, a piece of wisdom to help Asa understand a situation or help her make a decision. But later on, potentially episodes down the road, or maybe even in the same conversation, she might ask something different, and Makio will respond, seemingly with something outright contradicting what she said before. And Asa will point this out and say, well, hold on, you just said this, and now you're saying something else. Those don't make sense. And I love how Makio has to, in real time, think, wait, did I say that? Is that what I meant? Hold on. And of course, Asa inevitably responds with basically her catchphrase, I don't get it. I don't understand. And it's not hard to blame a 15-year-old for not understanding, especially when dealing with somebody as obtuse and sometimes socially inept as Makio. But it's not as though Makio is intentionally being contradictory. In her mind, whatever she's saying does make sense. It isn't a contradiction in her head. And that's because in one situation, she will feel a certain way, and the other situation, which in Asa's mind is inextricably connected to the first, isn't something she's thinking about in the same way. For Makio, it's not a contradiction. But nevertheless, she still has to stop when someone points out, hey, aren't those things contradictory? And think about what she actually means. Think about if her words were contradictory, if she didn't articulate herself in the right way. Think about what she really meant in the moment. If her words could have been chosen more carefully. If she just wasn't explaining herself very well, or maybe there is a contradiction that, for her at least, just doesn't exist, but for others is very apparent. And I love that so much. It happens so often throughout the series, but I absolutely adore it. With a lesser character, somebody who's not written as well, contradiction can come off as very frustrating, not just to the other characters, but to the viewer as well. But here it's done deliberately, and it makes Makio feel all the more human, because this is how people are. People are composed of a myriad of contradictions, and we don't always recognize that, because for us, they may not be contradictions. They may only seem that way to other people because they are different people, and they may not ever be able to truly understand how we think about things, how we feel about them inside. All we can really do is try our best to explain the way we feel with the tools at our disposal, with our words. And we may not be able to properly explain how we feel all of the time. We may not think about two situations in the same way as somebody else. We may see them as separate and provide different pieces of wisdom for tackling them, whereas the person we're talking to might think, no, there should be one piece of advice that handles both situations. These things happen whenever we take the risk, so to speak, of interacting with other people. And I love that somebody like Makio, who will just spend hours and hours working on her novel instead of interacting with others, somebody who isn't always the best at being flung into new situations, is forced to think back and wonder, am I approaching this correctly, or am I contradicting what I said? So I love these interactions between her and Asa, even though they certainly frustrate Asa and probably do make her life and trying to figure out what she wants to be and overcoming her loss just a little bit more difficult than it otherwise might be. But I just love how relatable and human these scenes make Makio. Makio may be contradictory. She may say she doesn't like interacting with other people, even though we see plenty of times with her relatively small group of friends that she does go out and have fun and enjoy her time with them, that she can have lunch with her ex and have him come over and help with Asa despite their messy breakup and generally complicated feelings for each other. But in her mind, these are not contradictions. And that is incredibly important and incredibly human. Of course, the value of words and using them to try and articulate how we feel is not just present in these conversations. It's present in the literal writing, whether that be in Makio's novels or in Asa's journal. Right from the beginning of the show, Makio recommends to Asa that she write her feelings in a journal. And she says the journal can contain whatever she wants, whatever she's feeling in that moment. What she writes doesn't even necessarily have to be true, which of course is something that later sparks another conversation about contradictions further down in the series, when Asa is trying to explain herself, just between her and the pages in her journal, how she's feeling in the moment, how the loss of her parents, having to now live with her aunt in a different apartment, how she's struggling to understand what kind of person she wants to be, what kind of role she sees for herself. She has this outlet in the journal to explain what it is that she's feeling, even if it's not just a direct, I am sad, I am frustrated. It might be more abstract. It might in fact be a visual representation of what she's feeling. The show has a number of these sequences where we're presented with a dream-like representation of what the characters are feeling inside. Walking through a desert without any water, walking along a beach, staring at the ocean. These visuals, these almost magical dream sequences, present to us, the viewer, what the characters are feeling in a way that words wouldn't necessarily be able to do. These not only tie in very well with the idea of Makio being a writer, and this being something she has to do for a living, but also is a particularly valuable and profound action for people going through a loss to consider trying. You might not be able to say in very clean, articulate words what you're feeling, whether that be in a normal conversation with somebody else or a conversation with yourself in the pages of a journal, trying to write down how the loss of someone important is affecting you. You might not be able to do that because you may not understand what it is that you're feeling. But even if you can't articulate it in normal words, you might be able to explain it visually with figurative language. Because that weight that you feel dragging you down bit by bit until it just bursts out of you like a dam breaking can be very difficult to describe cleanly in a way that everybody can understand. But figuratively, you might be able to present it in a way that anyone can understand. Just like how an author would want to be able to convey a situation in a story with figurative language that might evoke a certain visual for the reader, that using normal, straight-to-the-point words would never be able to achieve in the same way. Asa's journey to find herself, to understand what kind of person she wants to be, is born out of her trying to deal with the loss of her parents, seeing her debate if she wants to be somebody who stands out versus someone who avoids the spotlight, debating if she actually wants to perform for the chorus club, or does she just want to hang back and observe from the sidelines, wondering if she would even be here, would have even made the decision to join the chorus club if it wasn't for Makio. This sudden change in her life gives us such insight into how her loss is shaping her. Asa reconsidering how her parents may have felt about her, questioning whether her mother ever really did love her, even with written words plainly stating that she did, staring back at her. Nevertheless wondering, are these words true? Can you ever truly know if anyone's words are true? Are the contradictions intentional or just to mess with your head? These are the things that a teenager would have swimming around in their mind, even without a tragedy accelerating those thoughts to the forefront. Of course, the answer is no. You can't know exactly what someone means by their words with 100% certainty, just like you can't truly know exactly what someone is feeling, no matter how well they try to articulate it. You can't always know if somebody's telling you the truth. Sometimes you just have to believe it. Take that leap of faith. Take a chance on placing your trust in them. Eventually, all of these experiences and interactions with Makio and the other people in her life bring Asa to the decision to finally perform at the end of the series. And while the story is not fully adapted in these existing 13 episodes, and it's open to debate as to whether it will continue to be adapted or not, I'm happy that, at the very least, we get the satisfaction of witnessing a resolution to Asa's journey, to see her finally realize what kind of person she wants to be, and to see that all of these experiences have helped her to grow into a better, more complete person. The journeys of Asa and Makio are absolutely incredible. Seeing them grow together with each other, tackle the loss they both are contending with, albeit in radically different ways at times, and ultimately come out the other side of it as better people, make Journal with Witch an instant favorite in my eyes. While this series starts off primarily about loss, I think in actuality, it's more about learning to understand and express yourself. Whether that be through your actions, spoken words, or what you write in the pages of a book, this is a show about learning what it is you want to be, how you want to live your life, and who you want to live it with. Journal with Which is, in so many ways, about learning what it means to be human and the different forms each person's journey to discover that might take. And for that and so much more, I am forever grateful that a piece of media like this was able to shine as brightly as it has. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and until next time, take care everyone. Look forward to the next video.